This is the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group meeting. Today is March 14, 2019. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and posted on YouTube. Today on the agenda, first we're going to review the planning spreadsheet to go over the items that we've been working on for 1.14. The 1.14 code freeze was last week on Thursday. Then if you have any PRs that need attention, designs that need review, please feel free to add to the agenda. Or if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, feel free to add it to the agenda under miscellaneous as well. So let's get started with SIG storage planning spreadsheet and go over that very quickly. First, we have the migration engine for CSI. Deep, are you able to give an update on this?
Yes, so basically quite a bit of work was done during 1.14. So mount and attach are ready. There's a final piece remaining in the external provisioner that should be ready pretty soon.
Cool.
And we have started planning for the things for 1.15 as well.
And this inline volume migration is still ongoing, or is that for next quarter?
It's for next.
Okay. Awesome. Well, great work there, guys. Thank you. Next up is the inline volume support for CSI. Vlad?
Yes. So that PR eventually got landed in 1.14 and got merged. And I was able to work with a early implementation in the host path to test that. So I have a couple lingering issues open yesterday to fix a couple bugs. But as far as the main PR, it's in.
Awesome. Great work, Vlad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is block volume. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and start marking some of these as completed. Block volume support to beta for CSI. Masaki or Ben, any updates on that?
This is merged. The feature gate merged. I think the docs change merged. I don't know about that PR565. Let me go look at that one. I don't know what. That's the enhancements patch. I don't know if there's any work to do there.
Okay.
Slow web browser. Yeah, that one's still open. So I don't know whose job it is to close enhancements.
The enhancement issue?
Yeah.
Oh, I think the release team can help with that.
Okay. Yeah. So we're basically done here.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Next up is adding support for online-offline resizing to CSI a month.
Yeah, this was merged. Both entry was merged, and the external provisioner that has necessary features as well. So I'm working on docs. I have a PR open, and yeah, I'm working on implementing. We have the support for expansion in the mock driver, but I'm working on adding support for the real drivers and test it out.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Hemant. Do you want me to mark this as complete or leave it open for now?
I think it's done mostly. Yeah.
Okay. Next item was mostly design lifecycle manager for CSI. Jan sent out an email about this about a week or so ago to give an update. Jan, do you want to talk about this? Looks like Jan's not on with us today. Is anyone else able to give an update on his behalf? Okay, we'll skip over this and get an update next time. Moving on, next item is moving topology to beta. Deep, any updates on this? This is topology for CSI.
Right. So I believe Shing's work pretty much handled all of this, and Michelle moved it to beta.
Sweet.
Yeah, so all the in-tree work is done. There's still some out-of-tree work that still needs to be completed.
Okay. And does that look like it's on track for getting completed in the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So we'll leave that as started. Next item is alpha CRDs to beta. Shing?
So I think that's already covered by the one above. So right now there's a bug fix I'm still working on. Think should get that done soon. So still trying to figure out a few issues with the integration tests.
Okay. And do you want me to mark this as complete or leave it open?
So Michelle, what do you think? Is this can be say we mark this one to be done and then bug fix will be tracked separately, or what do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I think we can track the bug fix separately. It's fine.
Okay. All right, great work there. Next up is a design item, secure volumes. I'm not sure if Jing is able to give an update here. I don't know if she's on the line. If not, Michelle, do you want to give an update?
Sure. I think we're still exploring options that we want to pursue at this point. So we don't really have anything concrete at the moment.
Okay. Next up is scalability testing. So the KEP was close to merging last time. Any updates on that?
Yeah, the KEP is merged. So we just need to start executing on it. I know Patrick has been mostly focused on getting CI testing set up for the CSI sidecars. So I don't think he's had a chance to start working on this yet.
Okay. This may be something that slips into 115, I imagine.
Possibly.
Okay. Sounds like solid progress. Next item is redesigning the keys for per node volume attachment limits. This was a design only. It's something that is required for CSI migration. Hemant, any updates on this?
So we have a design, but I need to write it down, and I'll work on like getting it implemented in 1.15. So I should have a design written down by next week sometime.
Awesome. Thank you, Hemant. Next up is the pluggable end-to-end test framework. So most changes were in was the last update, and the only thing left was documentation and examples. Any updates on that, Michelle?
Yeah, so all of Patrick's changes are in, and he's actually testing it out with the CSI host path driver as part of his CI setup work. I know Matt and Methusen have also been testing this out with a CSI NFS driver, I believe. So I don't know. I think we're close to being able to like publish some example of how to actually use this.
Okay. But the docs, other than the example, are already done?
I think that the example is the docs.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Next item is Kubernetes conformance.
Yeah, hi. There is not a whole lot of work done. There are PRs outstanding, but I don't expect any of them going into 114 yet. There is refactoring of test suites done over the last 2 weeks, I think, and I will have to work using that. We opened a PR in community 3361. I pasted into the chat. That is for promoting validation suites. If that PR gets merged, that will give us ability to start working on the validation suites. So,
cool. So I think that's okay. We made good progress here, and hopefully we'll carry on this work for 115. Thank you, Suri. Next item is local PV to GA. Hamad, Michelle?
Yeah, I think all the work has been done pretty much. We will, we're planning on releasing a new static provisioner, but it's kind of orthogonal to the whole GA thing. So yeah, I think that could be tracked separately.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and mark this as complete then. That is awesome and glad to hear. Next item, cleanup storage feature gate handling. That was completed. No need to go over that. New non-recursive volume ownership design for this. Matt Smith, any updates on this?
No updates on that. I've not had any time to work on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take this up in this quarter to come up with a design that kind of addresses everything.
Okay, sounds good. The next item is revisiting UID, GID, handling with volumes. Brad, any updates on that?
Yeah, so I've actually got the design doc started for this, but I haven't even fished it around internally yet, so it's not ready for the community.
Cool. Next item is volume health. And this was also a design for this quarter. I believe Nick Wren and Xing were helping drive this. Last update was design focused on local storage. Need to add network storage CSI to the design. Any updates on that?
So I'm looking at from the CSI side, what are the things we want to detect, and to see if we want to detect those, what are currently available in the CSI interface and what we might want to add there. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this will be an interesting design for next quarter. I have some ideas for it and some other potential uses for it. It might be as simple as potentially introducing a, volume is healthy call in CSI.
Is that? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's enough because there's a lot of things are missing if we really want to find out, right, whether the volume is deleted or not, whether it's still attached, whether it's mounted. So it seems like there are a lot of things we need to find out. So I don't know if can we just just add one interface, or do we need to add multiple things? That I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah, okay. So sounds like good questions. We'll carry on this design for 115.
Okay.
All right. Next item is CSI entry post GA tasks. Andrew started working on these. V1 was completed. The read-only stuff was moved to 115. Is there any other work that was remaining here?
I don't think there was anything remaining besides the read-only stuff and some of the cleanup work.
Okay, sounds good to me. Next item is CSI out of tree automate the sidecar release and test process. So the KEP was under review, framework for consistently building and pushing to Quay was done manually. This would simplify that. Any updates on that?
Yeah, so all the sidecars are now using the same build and release tools. The only thing left is to set up CI across all of the sidecars, or to set up the E2E tests.
Cool. And is that something that is planned to be completed in the next couple of weeks, or are we bumping that to 115?
I I hope to have it completed by then.
Okay, so we'll keep it here. Great. Next item is refactoring kubelet driver registrar to kubelet driver registration to the reconcile model. So this is there's a PR in progress. It did not make it into 1.15, but there's been good progress on it, and hopefully we'll get it in for 1.15.
Who's working on that side? Is that you?
No, there's somebody in the community. I think Tara something.
Okay.
Working on it.
I'll look for it.
Review that. Yeah, if you're interested in helping review that, let me know. I can make a link for that as well.
Okay.
Next item is volume snapshotting. Any updates on this, Xing?
Yeah, so the capsule is still being reviewed. We're addressing the comments. Jing wants to set a meeting with API reviewers and to see if we could reach some consensus, because some comments are from different reviewers are pointing to different directions.
Yeah, I actually had a meeting with him about this yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I think, the comments are actually coming from trying to make sure that the design that we come up with aligns with the design that SIG Apps wants to pursue.
Okay.
And have a cohesive story kind of end to end for that. And I think in the next few, either the meeting on Monday or the meeting after that Jing has for snapshots, she'll discuss that more at length.
Okay.
But yeah, good progress there. Next item is CSI library, moving the mount library to an external common repo that can be consumed by multiple places. So there was a large PR that got split up. The first PR merged. Any other progress on this, Travis?
Yeah, as part of splitting it up into smaller ones, I did open a new one, but it didn't get in before code freeze. And since it's just refactoring, I can't push it anymore until the freeze is lifted. But once that comes up, I've got a bunch of things queued up.
Okay. All right, thank you, Travis. This is good progress. Next item is provisioning capacity reporting for generic topology, which is also required for local volume dynamic provisioning. We had no owner for this last time. It sounds like we're unlikely to have found one right before code freeze. Is that true, Michelle?
Yeah, there's still no owner for this.
Okay, so we'll pump this to 115. And then the subpath work, there was a PR merged. There was some node end-to-end test failures that were under investigation.
They've been fixed, so this can be done.
Okay. Next is post-GA entry topology work.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it. We'll take a look at it one.
Okay, that makes sense. Next item is CSI out of tree, moving NFS driver to separate repo. Last update, the initial PR was merged, and there was outstanding work to add update to CSI, add deployment scripts, add CI/CD, and a bunch of other work. Mathusin or anybody else who's been working on this, any updates for the NFS side of things? Okay, I'll assume that is still outstanding. John, any updates for iSCSI? Okay, and then finally, fiber channel. Any updates on that?
Yeah, Patrick made a PR to import the release, CSI release tools and set up Travis CI. So he wants to get that in first.
Okay. So PR is out and under review. Need someone familiar with Fiber Channel to help review it. So it sounds like the same status as last time. Is anybody able to help review the Fiber Channel PR? Okay, in that case, what we can do is Michelle or I can help review it and just kind of do a sanity check and go ahead and get that initial merge in there and say, you know, it's a prototype. And if anybody wants to use it, they find issues with it, hopefully they can revise and fix things. We're going to have to merge it without having any experts review it then. All right, thanks, Mathusan. Next item is moving online resizing to beta. This was designed for this quarter. The KEP was going to be presented to SIG apps, or was presented to SIG apps. They determined it not to be a blocker. Any updates on this, Aman?
Yeah, I think we're just going to be, that's going to be the default mode in 1.115, and that's the design we'll be going with. There hasn't been any major objection from SIG apps, so that's the design we'll be pursuing.
Okay, and I hope people in this SIG understand the implications here, and if anybody is familiar with a storage system for which this will not work, now is the time to speak up before this becomes the default. If you don't understand the implications of it, please reach out to Hemant or follow up on one of the related linked issues. Maybe Hemant, you can post a link in the chat for folks who want more context.
Yeah, I'll send out an email as well to the
Perfect.
SIG.
That'd be great. And yeah, if anybody has issues with it, now's the time to speak up. All right, next item is auditing CSI PVC code, which I believe we were, somebody started taking a look at. Any updates on this, Michelle?
Yeah, so on the issue, there's like a detailed analysis of the code paths and stuff. We decided that the corner cases were pretty rare, at least for local PV. But we might need to come back to this for CSI inline ephemeral volumes.
Okay, so maybe we'll carry on this work for 115 and do the same review for CSI. All right, thank you. And then finally, last item is volume expansion for stateful sets. This was blocked on how volumes support offline resizing. Any updates on this, Hemant? Hemant, are you there? We might have lost him. Okay, we'll get an update on this next time.
Sorry, I was just trying to.
No worries.
Okay, so yeah, the update is that we had to solve or at least propose a solution for the offline resizing. Just the volume type that only support offline resizing. That KEP does not addresses that, so that's what is blocked on.
Okay.
So we'll work with SIG apps to unblock it and move it in 1.15. That's the plan.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for that update. All right. Let's go back to the agenda. Next up, there is an announcement from Brad. Brad, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So for the KubeCon EU in Barcelona, there's a contributor summit. And for the past few contributor summits, they've asked the SIGs to either offer presentations or just do general participation. And, I know there was quite a few submissions for storage-related topics just for the overall KubeCon. I don't know how many actually got accepted. I think notices actually went out last week or something. But for those people that didn't get accepted but still plan on attending KubeCon, and especially the contributor summit, I was looking at doing like some SIG storage presentations. So if people have ideas and already plan on being there, please send me, an abstract, and we kind of work together to maybe throw some agenda together for Contributor Summit presentations.
Is this going to be different from the storage day that's also going on?
Yes, this will be contributor oriented. So good stuff would be like CSI driver development, operator development, but probably not hyperconverged storage. That would not probably be a good topic for this.
In the past, Brad, the Contributor Summit has been kind of all the Kubernetes contributors in a single room the first day, like on a Monday before KubeCon, and then folks will go up and give presentations. So it sounds like you're organizing the SIG Storage presentation for that forum?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So that's the context for folks. This is usually a meeting that's held right before, the day before KubeCon. It's all the Kubernetes contributors. It's actually fairly difficult to get in because there's a lot of people that want to get involved, but there's not enough space. So if you really want to be involved, it might be a good way to get involved. And when you think about these topics, think about how they would be more widely applicable to beyond just SIG storage, to the wider Kubernetes community. What are the things that we want everybody else who's working on Kubernetes, who's helping develop Kubernetes, to be aware of? I think there are a lot of good topics. So thank you for organizing this, Brad.
Yep, no problem.
Next
announcement. Do you know how, because there are a lot of other SIGs presenting as well, right? Do you know how much time we have for SIG storage?
I think we could negotiate that just depending on how many people are interested in presenting.
Okay.
So but of course we can't take all the time, but if we have a couple presentations, I think we might be able to get them in.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and then the next announcement was the next meeting for this SIG is going to be March 28, and we're going to use that to plan for 1.15. So be prepared for that. I'll try and send out an email before that to start generating a list of topics. I'll create a new sheet on this spreadsheet, and you can start adding items there for things that we should be working on for 1.15, and we'll help review those at our next meeting. So prepare for that. Next item is PRs to discuss that need attention. Simon, looks like you have a PR adding expansion for Storage OS. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think it should be fairly straightforward, just adding expansion to our entry driver.
Okay. And Hemant, would you be able to help review this?
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Cool. All right, thank you. And next, doesn't look like there's any designs that need review. There's a couple of items, miscellaneous items from Sri. Do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, actually, I pinged Hemant yesterday about online volume resize. That's not that's in alpha still. So I assume that we can push forward to beta in 1.15. That's one thing. And the second thing, second issue is a separate one. That's essentially some of both of these things we have customers who are interested in. We are using, Akash is also on, I believe is available. So PVC annotations that are used today to set certain parameters for creation. So there is a workaround provided there, but there is no out-of-the-box experience for this. So it requires a design or a cap to, if there are any ideas.
Yeah, so this is something that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. What I want to underscore here is that the PVC object is supposed to be all about portability. Portability across clusters, across implementations of different types of storage. So what we don't want to do is have the PVC object decorated with fields, annotations, labels that are specific to any given storage provider. The PVC is a generic way to represent, to ask for storage. The things that are specific for a storage system should be on a PV object. They should be on a storage class. That said, I do understand and realize that there are cases where a storage class's opaque parameters are insufficient. And so what I've been asking folks to do is, instead of poking a hole in the API and saying, hey, let's just expose annotations directly to the storage system from the PVC, let's talk about the individual use cases that you have. And folks have highlighted a couple of useful use cases to me. One was around storage system topology. That was a good use case, and Michelle's been thinking about a design, and we'll get something out there. Another interesting use case was around the ability to tag volumes. And I've got a couple of different ideas for that. One is, if you want to just tag it with PVC information, if you look at the name field on the create volume call, that already includes the PVC UID. So that should be sufficient if that's the only information you want. If the type of tagging that you want is more advanced, so for example, you want the ability to tag your volume with workload information, or you want to be able to tag it with for example, information about billing or something like that, my recommendation would be to create a small, simple controller that looks at your provisioned PVs and kind of rectifies and applies whatever needs to be done. The benefit there is that you're going to get the customization that you want, as well as the fact that it'll actually be continuously updated rather than applied once and potentially get stale over time. But basically my point is that I'd like to focus on individual use cases. Annotations themselves are not a use case. They are a way to be able to unblock some use cases. So let's talk about the use cases.
Okay.
Hi, Akash. So I wanted to highlight one of the use cases which me and Srini had discussed on this. So one use case what I can bring up from our customers is they would usually provide the Kubernetes zones and the regions from the PVC. So they decide dynamically where they want to provision the PVC, and today they send it via the PVC is where the zone is sent by the customer. So that is one of the use cases we had where we needed this data to be passed on to the CSI driver.
Sure. And Michelle, do you want to address that use case a little bit?
You mean for being able to spread volumes across topology that is independent of Kubernetes?
No, this is topology that is Kubernetes specific, but they want users to be able to control it. So they want to be able to specify it on the PVC. So it sounds like they could do that by using the pod late.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think you can do that today with the volume scheduling feature. Basically, you turn on late binding in the storage class, and then basically we pass through the scheduler decision for pods to the volume creation, and that way all the information is taken from all the constraints that the pod has specified. So if you want your pod to be spread across zones, you just need to put pod anti-affinity on zones in the pod, and then let the scheduler schedule the pods across zones. And when provisioning comes around, it's going to have a hint as to the nodes that the scheduler chose, and you can use that node to figure out what zone it's in.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm aware of this feature. This is the topology aware scheduling, right? So So that is what you're suggesting. So we add the anti-affinity rules for the pods, and then based on that, we can try to support our use case of dynamic zone selection.
Yeah, so feel free, you can ping me on Slack. We can discuss this in more detail. I think for that particular use case, we should already have that solved.
Okay, sure. I'll check this out, and I'll ping you offline if required. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other use cases or anything else you want to talk about in this space?
Yeah, I had one.
Sure.
So our storage product has a concept of tenancy, and it aligns really well with Kubernetes concept of namespaces, and we'd like to be able to do our provisioning within, essentially align these two things, Kubernetes namespaces and tenancy. But with the current CSI model, tenancy is only passed in, if you turn on this particular CRD object and it's only passed in with like 2 calls, and I think they're node calls. In order for us to support the tenancy model that Kubernetes has, it would need to be, the namespace information would need to be passed in with every call made to the backend, because the storage, essentially once you provision within a tenant, it's sequestered to that tenant, and it might as well not exist to the other tenants. So we would need that namespace information, and at least currently I don't see any way other than maybe doing an annotation like this to provide that information to the storage plugin.
Okay, I think that's a legitimate use case. Could you open an issue to track that? And we can brainstorm some ideas. My initial reactions are, one, can we make this more generic? Like, that is one way to do tenancy. Are there other ways? Are there, let's see if we can make it more generic. If not, honestly, I'm not, passing through namespace information is not a huge deal, because you can't use that alone to violate portability. So it's not that bad a use case.
I see a problem, though, in the future where if we ever had a way to move like a PVC across namespaces, you could run into trouble here. Like, because
that would be fine.
PVCs themselves have no namespace, right? And you can delete a PVC and then create a new PVC in a different namespace that's bound to the exact same PV. Kubernetes will allow this.
I believe that the generic way to solve that would be to create if say you didn't have a way of moving between tenancy models in your storage backend, you would essentially do a slow transfer, host assisted transfer to the next one. You would create in the new tenant and then transfer between.
No, the problem is the PV object doesn't have the namespace. It's the PVC. But the PV is the thing that's tied to the CSI volume, right? So if the PVC goes away, and the PV hangs around, now you have no idea what namespace that PV should be associated with.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Yep. That's
I'm not saying that there are no issues here, just that I think that this is something worth exploring.
Sure. Yeah, feel free to open up an issue to discuss it. I think the points that Ben pointed out are legitimate and areas that we definitely need to think about.
So which on Kubernetes for this?
You can start on Kubernetes, assign SIG storage. That'd be a good place to start the conversation, and then we can go from there and figure out what needs to be done.
Okay, cool. We'll do.
Hey, I had another use case which I wanted to highlight here. This is related to specifically for we are using S3 Fuse community storage. Those are the APIs. So the characteristic there is our use case is for every volume. We have a possibility that there can be multiple users using a single namespace, and we will also have multiple namespaces in such a way. So basically, each user will use their own secret to provision the volume. I know today we have the facility where we can give the secrets in the storage classes. With the special key fields. But the problem here is due to number of users, creating so many storage classes for each user per namespace would lead to a lot of storage classes to be created for particular storage. So this is something, one more use case where passing the secret names for each volume dynamically is something that we are looking at.
Sure. So there is a solution here as well. Michelle, do you want to talk about provisioning secret templating?
Yeah, actually, I think we just discussed this. We ironed out some more details on it yesterday, but I think, so right now we support secret templating storage class, but for all the operations except for provisioning. And then we just worked out some details on how to support templating for provisioning yesterday, and I think it can work. There's an issue open in the external provisioner. I would take a look at it and with our proposal and see if that works for you.
So the idea here at a very high level is that in your storage class, when you define a secret, instead of saying I want a specific name or namespace, you can actually have templates that you specify as the value of that name or namespace. And then at provision time or at a later time, Kubernetes will automatically replace that template with the name of the PVC, for example, that is being used to provision. And what that allows you to do is that you have a single storage class, and you could have multiple different secrets for that single storage class based on the volume that's being provisioned. And the secret could live in the namespace of the user. It could live in another namespace. This is very flexible currently for basically the attach and mount calls, secrets that are required on CSI for attach and mount. On the create and delete volume side, it's not very flexible. Right now, it only allows templating of PV name. And we're looking into making that more flexible right now. So that's the issue that Michelle just mentioned.
Yeah, actually, I have a comment on that. So I looked at this template, so I just take a look at it, create and delete things. The thing is, it's taking the PV name, if you see, as a template. I'm referring to more like a dynamic provisioner cases where the user will just create via the PVC and is not aware of the PV name. It's dynamically assigned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So creating secret with that name is not possible because it will change with every PVC. It's automatically assigned.
Right.
PV
so
name.
We have an issue opened to make this use the PVC name instead of the PV name.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This makes sense. Yeah, PVC name would be more better. Yeah.
Yep. And then I think it'll become more flexible to satisfy your use case. So take a look at that PR or this issue, and if you want this faster, you can help us implement it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. I'll take a look at this issue.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, use cases folks want to talk about?
Yeah. Hi, this is Simon Krum.
Sure.
So we found the same thing, that when you have multiple configuration parameters that you configured at a volume level as opposed to at a pool level, we see this explosion of storage classes. Another issue is that the storage classes are typically only administered by the cluster administrator, whereas we'd like users to be able to specify how many replicas they want, whether they want encryption and things like that. So like the storage classes does work, but we just end up with loads of them. So we found that by passing through the labels to the storage system, we're able to remove that.
Yeah, I certainly understand the attraction of being able to use annotations on a PVC to be able to reduce that combinatorial explosion of storage classes that happens. I don't think that that's a good pattern to move towards. In general, when we're violating basically portability of a Kubernetes portable API object, we need to have a very, very high justification. So I do recommend looking at it on a case-by-case basis of what are the things that are resulting in that combinatorial explosion, and see if we could come up with a way to reduce that. Are there first-class fields that we can add? Are there, is there first-class functionality that we can add to make Kubernetes more aware and able to allow automatic selection? Beyond all of that, there was an option that Michelle and I started talking about, which would allow users to potentially, application developers to be able to override storage class parameter defaults. That we've kind of tabled after discussing with Jordan Liggett. It becomes very, very complicated very quickly, and also begins to kind of, it moves the problem of portability to a different place. So what we were proposing was having a config map that you can have a user define that would allow you to override the parameters from a storage class and have the user reference that config map in their PVC. But then, we need to define edge cases like, is it required? What happens if it's not specified? Or what happens if it's specified and those parameters don't match up with what the storage class provides? How do you specify which parameters within the storage class can be overruled? So I think Jordan's biggest questions were around security. The storage class exposes parameters that are very powerful, and not all of them should be exposed to application developers or end users. And then at that point, if we get to a point where we're saying, what is going to have a default value, what's not going to have a default value, what can be overridden, what can't be overridden, we're essentially basically defining a very complicated schema within the storage class. So at this point, I think the recommendation is to live with that combinatorial explosion and write tooling on top of it to simplify it for your end users, so that they provide 1, 2, 3 parameters and you figure out what the class is on their behalf. And we can continue the discussion about these potential workarounds. I'd say let's start with a case-by-case basis. And then if that doesn't make sense at all, then we can consider these alternatives that are much more complicated.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
I have one more case. It's Shai.
Sure.
Setting the file system type in the PVC level could be useful. I wonder if this is a use case other considerers.
Yeah, this was a mistake in the API when it was built very early. Honestly, file system should not have been a per volume field. It should have been a PVC level field. Unfortunately, that wasn't the way that it was implemented, and block didn't exist at that time, and for a number of reasons it wasn't implemented that way, so we have to kind of live with that. But I guess what you're asking for is a way to be able to have users be able to specify the file system instead of having it once per storage class?
Yes.
Saad, is it like the reason we did not do is because using a file system requires you tools to be installed on the operating system, like XFS procs, or you cannot use XFS on GKE or similar things actually. So those were the motivations that we wanted to leave the control of which file systems users can use to in the hands of cluster admin.
Yeah, but I mean, we could have exposed the field in a generic PVC field and let the storage plugin figure out if it could support it or not.
Yeah.
The fact that we put it in the individual volume fields was a little bit of a mistake, honestly.
But also, just stepping back, how many different file systems would you actually want to support in your system? Are there really that many?
There could be at least 2, 3, 4, maybe more.
That's not a lot of storage classes.
Yeah. Yes, it is. If you need to open 4 storage classes for each file system type, it could be too much.
Especially when you add in things like replicas and all the other different potential storage class parameters in there, because you have to do that for each file system type too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the driver can
validate. Interesting thing is it's a difficult challenge to solve. I'm open to ideas because some volume plugins chose to define a file system. Some volume plugins chose not to. So there's no easy answer to say, hey, we're going to expose a new parameter at the PVC layer that is the file system. And if you already have one, like we need to define what all those edge cases are. And if this is an important use case, I'd suggest kind of putting out a cap and proposing something that handles all the weird edge cases and backward compatibility and all that.
If I may make a naive suggestion, this is Jose Rivera. What about simply telling vendors to implement a controller and CRD to abstract away the storage class combinatorial explosion? So like you'd you'd be stuck effectively not working with raw PVC, with straight up PVCs. You define a CRD of your volume type that then is handed off to a controller that then takes care of finding the appropriate storage class based on the parameters you give it, and then that creates the PVCs. So it's a level of abstraction on top of PVCs.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's similar to what I was proposing, which was put some sort of UI between the user and the storage class. If you have this combinatorial explosion, that would be a perfectly good way of doing it.
I mean, also, if we could have a PVC bind, a request to a storage pool or to a storage class based on labels, then you would have this easy way to dynamically select the storage class, and then having a dozen or a couple dozen storage classes wouldn't be so bad.
Yep.
While it does, well, I will admit the suggestion does feel like a sort of, go away and deal with it on your own scenario. I can't imagine that many storage solutions will share enough permutations of similar variables that it would be worth it to implement a generic solution. So implementing custom logic on top of the explosive general solution might be a viable and relatively frictionless solution.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, it's not such a horrible pattern in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, what we try to do is expose the lower level primitives that enable a wide variety of use cases, and then have folks basically be able to extend and build on top of that. So if you look at any sort of very complicated workload in Kubernetes, you don't actually deploy those directly by creating, stateful sets and replica sets and pods and PVCs manually. In general, you have exactly what Jose described, which is CRDs in a controller and operator to be able to deploy a specific type of complicated application. So presumably end users are not working on this stuff manually or directly. They have some sort of nicer abstraction between them that minimizes the complexity a little bit if it exists at that lower layer.
And also to that point, I think
the main issue is portability, because once we have these CRDs, each plugin is going to have their own CRDs, and everything we were talking about having a generic PVC to enable application mobility, all that goes away.
Yep.
Right. If you're putting every property out to your user and having this combinatorial explosion, like I think you're kind of doing your users dirty, right? Like an application developer should care about maybe the backups, but not necessarily every little parameter of it. And by specifying that, you lose the portability.
If this CRD route is going to be the suggested way of doing this, can we have maybe an example? So like just something that we can start as a jumping off point.
There's a sample controller with a sample CRD that shows you how to write controllers. That's really easy to grok.
Okay, good. I just haven't come across it yet.
If anything, it sounds like it might be worthwhile to have a sample storage controller that maybe more directly showcases how to write a controller that takes in storage parameters, converts them into either creating or searching for storage classes, and generates PVCs that way.
Yeah, but I think I want to reiterate Brad's point as well. Really think about what are the parameters that you really, really want to expose to your end users, the application developers, right? The Kubernetes kind of wants to get to a point where application developers have a very small set of choices available to them. They shouldn't really have to think too much about storage beyond like, I want slow, medium, fast, something like that. If you find yourself exposing a lot more details, there is probably something that we can do either within Kubernetes or somewhere else programmatically to try to reduce that complexity on their behalf. All right, any other comments about this? We're a minute over time. Okay, good topic. Sri, feel free to move the items that we didn't get to the next meeting, and then we'll talk about it there.
Thanks.
All right, thank you everyone for the great discussion. And if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to follow up offline on the SIG Storage mailing list. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.